Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming to watch the Intuitive Art Show. We are here with Cornelia Ward, and we're going to talk to her in a little bit about getting clients for your purposeful business and the journey that can be. But first, we are going to start off with an intuitive art drawing on the topic of getting clients when you're in that spiritual niche. So if you don't know how to do intuitive art, you can go to intuitiveartacademy.com, or if you're on Blab or watching this live, you can go click the link below. You can also feel free to ask questions. There's a little chat box over to the right you can ask, or you can just pop a question in the comment section of the blog. Okay, so if you have your own business, you know that this can be really daunting to find a way to easily get clients, to not have that be like the majority of your day or worry or stress. So I did this drawing with my eyes closed, and it's so funny. The first color that I put down is actually my ease color. So looking at this composition, it's quite interesting. So ease makes up the most of it, right? And then up here is my color for strategy, right? Because when you think in business, a lot of it is strategy. And this here looks black, but it's actually a really dark brown. And that is a really solid, grounded color. The grounding goes into the strategy and it goes into the ease. And I just think that's like the perfect metaphor for a spiritual business, where we want it to be an overlap between really solid thinking and strategy and business principles, but also really relying on that flow and ease and the union with our higher self that's just going to allow us to kind of float down the river. Around it is my color for love. And I think that if that's not really the backbone of your business, you're probably missing out, and you're probably not getting the kind of income or abundance or fulfillment that you are possible of, because love makes everything fun and easy and inspiring, and other people can see that. So, Cornelia, how is that? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, actually, so the love, when I think about love and how that connects, it's almost like that's the foundation from which we build a spiritually oriented business when we really want to make the world a better place. And I also, I talk to clients about self-care being a marketing strategy. Like we really need to get our self-care nailed down, be eating well and exercise and whatever that means for us personally, to be really in that place, to have a really strong foundation from which to build a successful business. And the love just totally, because it's like love, and then it's love for yourself, and then it just seems like it all ties in.
That's so perfect. It's funny, a couple of weeks ago, I asked my guides, how can I make more money? And they said, exercise. So it's totally true how they're both connected. So before we really get into it, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do? I know you do two things. You help people with their career, and then you also help people start businesses. So you can mention all of that.
Okay. So my name is Connie. My Cornelia Ward is my DBA, and Connie is my nickname. And I help people love Mondays. And a lot of people just kind of look at me like, well, what does that mean when I say that? And what they don't realize is that 80% of Americans actually are dragging themselves to a job each day, whether it's a business or a job that's just not working for them. And so what I do is I help create a transition plan into either a business or a career that really lights them up, so they're excited to get to work on Monday. So that's place from which I build my business. And I do help people who are confused about their career path. And then I also help people who either want to start a business, which is, very much based in kind of their spiritual connection and wanting to be a service to the world. So it could be a new business owner, or it could be somebody who is already in business and just really wants to go deeper into the work that they're meant to do, and at the same time, help more people at the same time.
And you also have a podcast, right?
Yes, I have a podcast called Go for Your Life Purpose. that's available on iTunes and on Stitcher if you happen to have a Droid. Yeah, that's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. So I want to go back to the self-care thing. I know a lot of us, when we want to get into the purpose world, we want to make money that way. We want to live as like a unified self, right? We want to be happy on Monday. We'll start a business and then we'll get lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we'll start overworking, we'll feel the pressure, we'll feel overwhelmed. So how can you advise people to keep track of their self-care while they're in that process?
Yeah, it's a great question. So here's the challenge for business owners, right? We have too much on our plate, whether we're starting something new or we're in the middle of a business that's been going on for a while, right? And so there's this constant tension around, well, if I take time over here for myself, it actually is going to compete with the time that I need for my business, right? Because we're always looking for some way to be more efficient. So what I tell my clients is, and this is a great way, because those voices come up in our head. It's a great way to get around the voices in our head that just say, you got to work, and you've got all these deadlines. So one way around that, connected to self-care, is to think about self-care as a marketing strategy. And from my perspective, you really need to have like that strong foundation, the love foundation, the self-care foundation. You really need to have both of those as a strong foundation connected to the self-care from which to build a business. I can give you a really great example. So those of us who are in helping professions, especially healers or coaches, the work that we do, we bring a lot of ourselves personally to that work. We're big givers. And it's really important, especially when I talk to hands-on healers, for instance, or even people who work on, do healing long distance. It's really, really important for us to have that really strong foundation of self-care, because then there's nothing, we're kind of this vehicle helping people with whatever problem we're helping them solve. And if we don't have the self-care nailed down, we just get really burned out. And then if that's the work we're meant to do, if that's our life purpose, then that goes out the window, because we think, oh, I can't do it. It's just not successful. I'm so burned out. And then we just end up in this place where we get totally off track.
Yeah. And I'm sure you agree, like the business journey is really one big lesson after another. And it's definitely the spiritual journey. And so if we're burning out, we're definitely missing something, right? It's like we're being called to step into more self-care, and we just let it go by. So
exactly. Yeah. So when those voices come up in your head, when, and you're saying you're too busy, you can't go take that swim or go for that walk. I mean, just build it into your schedule. That's the practical aspect. Just build it into your schedule. Your self-care is part of every day. And so you'll automatically start seeing things shift if you're starting to feel burned out. And it's just a great long-term plan.
Cool. So what do you mean by like it's a marketing? Do we share our self-care, or is it just that we show up differently to work?
Yeah, it's kind of an energetic thing, right? Like I have a lot of energy, and so I need to get a lot of exercise. And so every morning I go for a swim in the neighborhood pool. And so at 6:00, I was in the pool doing my laps. So the Connie you see showing up here, who's all excited about what I'm working on and how I can be of service and help people and, hopefully share some great information people can walk away with. That's a different person than if I hadn't gone for a swim. And swimming is part of my self-care. So I kind of have my kind of regime of self-care that I practice. And so it's all about taking really good care of yourself, the love piece, right? Loving yourself, which is all about self-care. And then that allows us to really have a lot more energy for all parts of our lives and be able to attract. I mean, you talk about from a spiritual perspective, kind of having that high vibration. I mean, it's really hard to have that unless you're taking really good care of yourself.
Yeah. And just think about how you care for your clients, right? Mm-hmm. You hold them on a pedestal, you make them feel special. So you have to do that for yourself too.
Yeah, totally. Totally. That's why I like that love piece in the artwork. That just makes a lot of sense.
Cool. So, clients, I know you have a personal story about why this became a focus for you. Would you feel comfortable sharing that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So let me give you a little bit of my background. I've had a couple of businesses in the past. I had a children's clothing business probably about 30 years ago, designing children's clothing. And then more recently, I was a broker in financial services. And so, I was very familiar before I started my business about 7 years ago. I was very familiar with, you know, how to get clients and how to make those different businesses work. And I definitely had the discipline and the steps to do it. But there was a big shift happening about 7 years ago when I started my business as a career and business coach. And I think a lot of coaches actually found that they needed to kind of re-engineer the marketing that they were doing. So I actually I have a master's degree in economic development. So between that and the two businesses, you would think that like starting this business 7 years ago would have been kind of like a no-brainer. And this is very common, is that the things that we really struggle with in our lives are the things that we can share with other people who have been through the same struggles. And we come at it from a very different vantage point because we've personally been in that place. So the place I was in 7 years ago is I was really struggling to bring in a steady flow of clients. It took me a long time to kind of put together a series of steps of, building that strong foundation, including the self-care, but really building that strong foundation. Marketing was very service oriented. What marketing did I feel comfortable with, doing as someone who wanted to be of service to the world? And so I finally put together, after lots of trial and error and learning different things, I put together a series of steps, which is basically what I teach my clients now. So it's like the pain I went through, right, and struggling for years. Now people, who want to work with me in the Passion and Purpose Business Program, those individuals, it just takes them a few months. So that's how I run my business now. And yeah, so it's the struggles, it's not fun, but there's definitely a lot of great gifts that can be kind of cultivated out of those situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that was a big learning curve for me too. Just the fact that you have to market, or you have to have steps, or you have to bring people through a process. When I started my business, I had no idea really that any of that was even necessary. I was so new to the online coaching world. Can you explain that a little bit? Like someone who's wanting to start a business, helping people, how can they understand that, like marketing and there's a process to getting clients?
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing that I think is important is I see this as a really common thing. You probably have too, Rachel, where like for instance, I'm a great example again, and this is part of the reason I struggled in the beginning, is when I gave people my elevator speech. So the one I just gave in the beginning, that was my elevator speech. I help people love Mondays. Like that's really clear. It took me a while to kind of figure all that out. So when I started my business 7 years ago, I would tell people that I helped others with life transitions and with money, because I had this background in financial services. So that to me sounded pretty specific, but people just didn't get it. So the first thing I would say is, and this is part of the foundation to building that strong foundation for the marketing, is to get really clear about the specific problem that you're solving and the specific solution that you're providing. And people get a little freaked out about that when they hear me say that. My journey is an example of that. People who, hire me to be a coach to help them get their healing business off the ground, for instance, or some kind of creative business. Part of the reason they hired me is because they're not getting that steady flow of clients and they're afraid to turn people away. Mm-hmm. So it's not that you don't, it's not that you don't accept new clients who do things sometimes I do things outside my wheelhouse, right? Like if a project looks really interesting, or I really enjoy this person that I'm connecting with that wants to hire me. So it's not like I'm going to say no to that, because I'm the business owner, right? I'm kind of in charge. So it's not like I'm going to say no to that just because it's not the career or business coach kind of niche. So it's just in terms of being able to communicate in a way so that the light bulb goes off for people, so your referral partners know who to refer to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the people you're standing in front of, they know whether, are you a healer that heals everything, or are you a healer who helps people with chronic pain so that they can get back to a really full and vital life? There's a big difference there.
Yeah, I know it does scare people. And I think what scared me the most about that in the beginning was I thought that was like I was locking myself into that forever.
Mm-hmm.
And when I explained to people, like, no, it's just for now. It's honestly, I think, more important to do that, learn the process. And then if you change your niche or your outcome, you can just apply the same process with different words.
Exactly. Yeah. So once you learn the system to bring in a steady flow of clients, you just like what you just said, if you want to change your ideal client or the problem that you're solving, you just go through the same steps again. You've already kind of figured out the right system, and so you just go through the process again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So tell us about a typical client. Like, what if a healer business called you and said, okay, I need help, I need clients, I need to make an income. What is the process you go through with them?
Yeah. So we start with self-care. That's the first thing. And by the way, part of that self-care is having fun. I didn't mention that in the beginning, but having fun on a regular basis is really important. So that's where we start. And then we look at the problem that particular healer thinks that they're solving for somebody from their perspective. And then I ask them, okay, well, given that problem, what's the solution that you're providing? So those two steps are from their perspective, just to give them kind of this kind of overall kind of basis for the next steps. So then what they do is they go out and they do market research interviews, and they go out and, by the way, this is the piece, besides being specific, this was the other piece I was really missing before. So they go out and they do market research interviews. I give them all the questions to ask. And they go to people who, either colleagues or friends who may have the issue that they, are past clients, if they're a healer, if they've been in practice for a while. So they just ask things like, well, what keeps you up at night when it comes to your chronic pain? And what's if you could wave a magic wand, what would you make go away in terms of your health? Those kinds of questions. So they do the market research, and then we come back after they've found kind of a consistent pattern of what kinds of problems people have. And by the way, that's a really fun process because, when do you have a chance to actually go talk to people about the issues that they have, and people are actually transformed. The person you're interviewing actually is transformed as well. It's a very, very interesting process. So
that's really beautiful. I'm actually glad you said that, because I think some people might worry that they'd be bothering people, right? Thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, those of us who are sensitive want to be really respectful of others. So so people love to have, love to be asked about their opinion, right? And if they've worked with you, if you're not a new business, you've been in business for a while, which a lot of the healers I work with have been, and they're kind of struggling, they have people that they can go back to. And by the way, when I did this process, I went back to people who I had helped, and it was so gratifying. It was like such reinforcement that I was definitely on the right path. And the things that they told me that had transformed because of our work together, I may have known some of it, but, I didn't know the depth. That's how deep these questions go. Yeah, so it's a great process for people, and for the interviewer too. So the market research interviews happen, and then we come back and we look at the original problem and result that person thought that they were solving. And we go, okay, is that what you found in the market research interviews? And if not, then we tweak it so that we're walking the process with the words actually that people have used to describe their problem, so that we can use those words. Like when I say I help people love Mondays, those are the words that came out of my market research interviews, right? It's very tangible and very clear. And so what we do is we clarify the problem and result after the interviews. And then we're actually ready to identify the packages and the pricing. And from my perspective, the easiest way to really help people solve their issues, especially that example you gave as a healer. People typically, they're not going to go see someone once or twice, a healer, and actually have an issue. A lot of issues are just going to take a whole lot longer than that, right? And there are people who really have a lot of health issues in this country. So typically what I recommend is that people put together the packages so that they can work with people over a longer term and not just be charging on an hourly basis. So that's beneficial in terms of us really fulfilling our purpose and doing the work that we're meant to do, really solving the client's problem, and at the same time being compensated in a way so that we're not, and that actually in itself is an act of self-care, is to being compensated in a way so that we're not stressing out about money, because then, you know, that whole, it's definitely not the love energy around the business at that point when you're really stressed out. So we put together the packages and the pricing based on the interviews. The packages are the solution and how the solution is going to get delivered. And then we do the marketing from there, which is, for me, I teach 3 tiers of marketing that are very service oriented and that are, you know, great for sensitive people who are very aware of not wanting to make other people uncomfortable, but at the same time, really wanting to support people in solving their issues.
That's beautiful.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
So how do you approach service-based marketing? Like, is it educational or is it just gentle? Like, how would you describe it?
Yeah, it is informational. It's about educating people. So there's 3 tiers that I recommend people use in terms of marketing in this particular program that I teach. One of them is about connecting with people one-to-one and really getting into the nitty-gritty with them about what issues are stopping them from moving forward in their health, for instance. And then giving recommendations to those individuals about what small steps they can take immediately without even hiring. You know, maybe the person isn't ready to hire a coach or a healer, but they walk away with some really concrete ideas. And again, it's like those market research interviews. The conversations that you have with people are just very transformational for them. They really get somebody to hear, listen to them, and tune into what they need. So those are transformational, even if you meet with the person once. That's the one-to-one connection, and that's one of the marketing prongs. The second one is also very service-oriented. It's connecting with people who are serving the same market. So somebody who's a healer, you know, that person, you know, would be a great referral partner for someone who's a therapist or other health professionals, like maybe a health coach. You know, people who are, you know, in the medical field, if, for instance, a healer is helping people with chronic pain, that kind of thing. And so that's another really service-oriented, very collaborative way of connecting and supporting people, your colleagues as well as your potential clients. And then the third one, and when I think about education, as you mentioned, I think about this one in particular, is actually doing speaking and you know, reaching out to people either through Meetup or some other venue where you're offering teleseminars, webinars like this, right, where you're providing great content for people who, you know, may walk away with a few snippets and some actions that they can take right away. And then if they want to go deeper, you know, there's an opportunity for them to connect with you one-to-one for that conversation.
That's really cool. You know, and all of that, it just feels very open, right? Like there's no constriction, there's no ickiness or anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. And you know, I don't know if I've really seen another business coach talk about referrals as an additional prong for someone new and starting out, or really anything. You know, we're both in the group JV Insider Circle. That's where we met, and so we're basically doing that now. Yeah. But I haven't seen that in other programs, so it's really cool that you bring all those things together.
Well, thanks. No, it's a lot of fun, and it's, you know, I mean, I think most of us want to support each other. You know, we want to support our colleagues, and that's one reason why, you know, joint venture, you know, the JV Inner Circle is a great thing, is that there's just a great opportunity to support other people in business, because we're all trying to serve the same clients, right, and make the world a better place. And it's a, you know, just a great way to collaborate with people and help people kind of solve their issues in a more kind of integrated way.
I found too that it's a great way to meet friends, even because a lot of us entrepreneurs, we're not surrounded by people doing the same thing in our hometowns or in our household.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be a little lonely. And so reaching out to people who are serving the same tribe, you already know they share at least something with you. And so it can be a way to meet really cool people.
Yeah, exactly. And every town, no matter where in the world, always has some kind of group where people can connect with people of like mind. Yeah.
Awesome. So what would you say is the biggest mindset hurdle that people who are in the whole spiritual niche are struggling with?
Well, money is a big one, I think, for people who are spiritually oriented. And in terms of mindset around money, there's a couple of ways to look at that. I mean, my belief is that we were each, and this ties into the life purpose, that we're each given gifts and talents to share with the world. And from my perspective, that happened before we landed here on the planet. We had these gifts and talents that we were going to share. And we made agreement, basically a contract, an agreement that we were going to share those gifts and talents in order to make the world a better place. And so we all know that, a lot of us, that doesn't end up happening for a while, right? Like we get distracted and we end up down a different path and we end up unhappy. That's why there are 80% of Americans are unhappy in their work, right? Because they're not really sharing their gifts and talents. So one way to think about the whole money thing is that as long as we're doing the work that we're meant to do, sharing those gifts and talents with the world, it goes back to that agreement that we made before we landed on the planet that we would be taken care of. So that's one way to think about, earning income and knowing that it's, there obviously has to be an exchange of energy or an exchange of something tangible, right, in order to make a partnership with a client work well. So, and obviously, the more you're able to earn, whatever your particular goals are, the more you can help other people and, donate to organizations that are meaningful to you, whether it's in the environment or it's children or other people. There are a number of people. I was trained by Doreen Virtue, who is an author with Hay House. And her example is just a great example. I mean, she's very comfortable. She's very well off. She works really hard. She's very spiritually oriented. And because she's helping so many people, she's able to earn a greater income. That, I guess, would be another business tip for people who are interested in really expanding their reach, is like through those, like the meetup gatherings, through the speaking, that marketing prong. That's a way to help more people. And the more people you can help, the greater the capacity for your income to increase. So in terms of mindset, I would just remember about those gifts and talents and that we're supposed to share those with the world. And there's nothing wrong with, earning a good income, even, as a spiritual person. And we all had stuff, we grew up around that. And that basically we're taken care of through that process.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that the people you work with have that, a sense of having a really big potential or a really big purpose?
I do. There are a lot of people in their 20s and 30s. And since we're talking to a spiritually oriented group, I don't know how many who are listening today know about the crystals and the indigos. Should we define what those are?
Sure.
Yeah. So let's see. So the indigos. And
by the way, this group is the most woo-woo accepting group you'll probably ever find. So just go wild.
Oh, nice. Great. Okay. I'm in good company. So so the indigos and crystals are two different groups of people, and I'll just say, not to put people in kind of categories, but it's just a great way to kind of understand why these individuals are here to make the world a better place and what their life purpose is. So indigos are those really strong warrior types who are really sensitive and who know that they're supposed to do something really important in the world. A lot of them are healers and coaches in kind of service-oriented businesses or want to be. And they are held back because they are so sensitive and because this world can be kind of a tough place to live. They also tend to have really high energy and sometimes have a hard time getting organized. So in terms of life purpose, the indigos are meant to basically dismantle the systems that are no longer working in our societies. So some examples would be the individuals who were part of the Arab Spring, like back in Tunisia and in Egypt. I mean, they put their lives on the line, right, in order to, because they just saw these monarchies that, like, this authoritarian rule just doesn't work. And that, and indigos are very collaborative. It really drives them crazy to have this kind of top-down situation. Another example in our country is Occupy Wall Street. Mm-hmm. And all the individuals who, many of them really young, who just were like, the financial system just doesn't work anymore. So those would be an example of the indigos, really strong-willed. The crystals have a lot of similar attributes, except that the crystals are really not confrontational. They actually really dislike conflict. So there's some very some similarities there. So and then the crystals are just here to make the world a better place in general. They're the people who, they also have really strong sense of right and wrong. And they, love to be in nature. The whole thing about crystals, they love playing with crystals. They love being outdoors. They love animals. They're also very sensitive, really dislike conflict. And they're just really here to bring a lot of light to the world. And so I'm trying to bring this back to your original question. So what was your original question again when I kind of went into this?
Yeah, just do you find that your clients feel like they have a big purpose?
Yeah. So I actually work with a lot of indigos and crystals, and they know internally that they have some really important work to do, but they may be really, really frustrated because they're not quite sure how to make that happen. For instance, I have a client who works, she's a nurse, and she works at the local hospital here. I'm in Vermont, in Burlington. She works at the local hospital, and she is just really struggling with the way decisions are made within the, the overall healthcare system, but then also the hospital itself, like really struggling. And it really ticks her off. Like, she gets really angry about it, which is really kind of an indigo thing. And so what we're in the process of doing is helping her fuel that energy, that anger energy, and turn it into a career where she can help dismantle that system with all this great experience she has as a nurse, right? And really turn it around. So that she knows things as an expert. She's inside the system, right? So she's uniquely qualified, and she feels really strongly about this issue. She's uniquely qualified to go outside that system and basically work to dismantle it, because it just is no longer working. And so part of the work she's doing is actually getting some training. In Vermont, we have this thing called Emerge Vermont, EMERGE. I think that that organization is throughout the United States, but it's basically an organization that helps women, learn and connect and get education about what it takes to run for politics, run for election. And
that's really cool.
Yeah. So that, and I'm sure anybody's listening, I'm sure there are many. I mean, Vermont's so small, we usually don't get things first in Vermont. I know there are a bunch of them all over the country. So that's how she's channeling her energy, is by making a difference. And before she was really overwhelmed. I mean, she's still in the job. She's still not totally happy, but now she's turned that energy and she can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, and she can be with other people who also care through this training about making the world a better place. And she's excited about the future finally. So before she was like really burned out and what am I going to do? And just like a lot of people, I can't remember if this is her situation, but I know when I was in financial services and I was really needed to make a job change, I was one of those 80% that my job wasn't working. I got really depressed. And that's a very common thing, especially indigos and crystals tend to get really depressed because they see, I mean, in the last 2 weeks, has kind of been a great example of that politically, right? There's just been a whole lot of stuff going on and it breaks their hearts. And so they get angry and they just, and I think we all have a certain amount of this, just feeling like, well, what can we do? Right. And it's all about, and I guess the way I think of it is if we lived in a utopian world, each of us would know what our life purpose was and we'd be doing that work. And I believe, just from my kind of big picture perspective, that if everybody was doing the work they were meant to do, then we wouldn't have all this strife and conflict because people would be so fulfilled and they'd be making the world a better place and they'd be sharing their gifts and talents. So
I love that. Yeah, I think it's amazing that you're helping these people create something new, because I know I grew up just feeling like I didn't fit in with the current systems. I knew always that I didn't want to work for someone else, even though I had to for a decade. I dropped out of high school actually because I was so sensitive. I could feel everybody's stuff in high school. That is not a good thing. And I tried to work with the administration to do homeschooling or to go to college and get credit. I mean, I tried to work with them, but there was no working with me. So I just left and got my GED and I went to college and everything was fine. But, it's those kinds of things where if you don't have that sense of confidence within yourself, that could make you feel less than, you could feel like the world doesn't want you at that point.
Oh, totally.
And so I think it's cool that you're helping people create what will fulfill them, because a lot of people are not finding it in the world already there.
Yeah, well, thank you. No, I'm pretty passionate about it. And actually, so one clue to understanding the work that you're meant to do is that it breaks your heart. It really brings tears to your eyes when you think about it. And so that's one thing, when I talk about the indigos and the crystals and these sensitive people, and they have so much to offer the world, but frustrated and just like not sure where to aim that energy in a constructive way. I mean, it really breaks my heart to think about people in that situation. And I think a lot of creative people are the crystals and indigos. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so hopefully that resonates with people.
No, I'm sure it does. Yeah, it's actually perfect thing to talk about here. Even with me, yeah, I definitely resonate with that too. I grew up very different and always did things my own way, not because I was precocious, but because I just didn't fit with anything else. It just nothing else really felt right.
And it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to be kind of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it does. I can also relate to that depression. I don't know. I guess 5 years ago, I stopped working and I went back to college full time. And I thought it would be wonderful. I loved school. I loved learning. I was majoring in psychology. I was living in a beautiful house with nature. But in the span of it, just a couple of months, I felt so dead inside, like unfulfilled, unsatisfied. And it took me about a year to realize why. And it's that I wasn't working with people. I wasn't serving people or using my gifts. I was just studying. And so when you're missing that part of your life, when you're missing your purpose, you're going to feel depressed. And I felt really guilty. And so I was like, I have this beautiful situation. I don't have to work right now. I'm in school. I live in this great house. What's wrong with me? Do you find that people have that guilt as well?
Yeah, I think, I think there is guilt around, having the gifts and talents and having a lot to offer, and not being able to figure it out. right?
Mhm.
It's just like that confusion, that overwhelm and that confusion. And that's, so when I, like the client I was mentioning before who works for the hospital, so when I talked to her about the concept of indigos, she just burst into tears. It was like someone, had, got her, that really had the context, and there was some kind of meaning behind what she had been going through, and, really uniquely qualified her to move on and do something different.
That's so powerful. You're such a good example of someone who is spiritually minded, spiritually educated, who has that kind of portal problem of business money, right? So you're attracting people on like the rational level, on the physical level of, okay, everyone needs to pay rent. But then on the inside, you're actually helping people connect with themselves in a much deeper way. And as you're sharing with us, it's having a really profound impact.
Yeah, no,
That's
for
so cool.
sure, for sure. And it affects just on an individual level. Not only does doing the work you're meant to do make the world a better place as you're sharing those gifts and talents, but you also are, all aspects of your life actually change. It's amazing.
Mhm.
Like, you're not working on your partnership, you're not working on your money, you're not working on, whatever else, your health. But when you're doing the work that you're meant to do, that, that's just so much of who we are, that everything else just kind of transforms. It's a pretty fun process.
Yeah, I call that multidimensional results,
Mm,
right? Because like when you're hooked into your bigger, higher self and you're making decisions based on that and what feels good to you, then every other area of your life gets upgraded, up leveled
mm,
at the same time. I've totally
yeah,
found that.
that's a great way to describe it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we've got about 10 minutes left. I know it went by so fast. Is there anything that you think we missed?
The only thing that I would mention is that, people who start businesses are pretty creative people. And a lot of people who are very creative and are big picture people and love to start that new business, they're not necessarily good at the details. It's actually, from my experience, there are some people who are the big picture people, but also the people who can give the idea sea legs and actually help the process, actually implement the steps in the concept. So what I like to tell people is, because they beat themselves up, people who are, they're creative, they're big picture people, they're idea people, that's what they're supposed to do. And that's the position that they should fulfill from my perspective. Now, when you first start your business, you may have to do some of those details that you don't necessarily like to do, but the overall kind of idea is to, have that great idea, be the big picture person, create that thing, get it off the ground, and then go back to being the creator again, whether it's a different business or it's being creative within your business. And what I find is that a lot of people who are really creative, they get so down on themselves because they don't carry out the idea, or because it just doesn't interest them. So someone who's in that situation, I mean, that's the first thing I would say, is just know that if you're a really creative person, the Myers-Briggs type indicator is a career assessment. And so those of you who are familiar with it, so that would be the last letter, which is the P, the perceiver. And you can go on and, Google Myers-Briggs and learn a little bit more about it. But typically the big picture people have that P as the last letter in their type, the perceiver. And so it's just good to know that you're that big picture person, and that you either need to partner with a coach to help you implement, or some kind of a partner to help you implement, and really give those ideas feasibility. And the reason why I emphasize that so much is that actually, when I was in financial services, I worked for a really small firm here in Burlington, Vermont. And the person who hired me was a big picture person. He just, he always had this great ideas, all these great energy. And so he hired me as a broker to work for this firm. And there wasn't anybody there giving the idea sea legs. So I show up at my first day of work and they don't know what to do with me. So that's just one example, but it's, from my perspective, if you own a business and you don't know that you've got that blind spot, if you do have that blind spot and you just really don't like the details, it's really important to know that you got that blind spot, that you just want to play your position, be the creator in your business, and then offload it to somebody else, whether it's a coach or somebody else, a colleague, a partner, somebody in your business who helps you actually implement the plan and make it feasible. So just don't beat up on yourself and know that, most people who start businesses are the big idea people.
Totally. I can absolutely relate to that. And when I find myself taking care of too many of the details, I feel tired, I feel burnt out, and I don't have the same inspiration anymore. And so I guess about 6 months into my business, I actually hired a VA part-time, just a couple hours a week, because I needed someone to do that stuff for me. And I've had one ever since, and it's just amazing. And the one I have now, Gretchen, she's so good. And she's like my partner, she takes care of all the details of the implementing, the scheduling, everything that I would miss. And she suggests things and makes forms and spreadsheets. It's really important to find that person for yourself if that's going to be detrimental to you continuing on in your genius, because I think that's what it's all about, right? You got to offer the world the best of you. If, and it doesn't take much money to do that. I just started, an hour or two a week with my first VA, and that was all I needed. And if you have an extra 100 a month, you can actually make more money by offloading stuff that you don't like to do.
Yeah, exactly. And she probably, Gretchen, she probably loves doing that kind of work, right? That's what she's good at. Mm-hmm. So, and actually I'm glad you brought that up. So a virtual assistant, which can be just really so inexpensive, is a great way to offload some of that work. Yeah.
Yeah. She loves it. She loves being in that, the role of supporting the business and kind of being behind the scenes. So there are people like that all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So how can we get in touch with you, and what do you offer? I know that there are a lot of people listening right now who could use your services and might want to connect.
Yeah. So I work with two kinds of people, people who are confused about their career path, and I help them get clarity about that. And then I also work with people who are wanting to start a business, or they're in business and want to go deeper into the work they're meant to do and bring in that steady flow of new clients like we were talking about. And the best way to contact me about that is to go to my website, which is lifepurposestrategysession.com, where you can apply for a complimentary strategy session with me. So I'll say that again. It's lifepurposestrategysession.com.
Perfect. And I think we have that on the show notes already. If we don't, I'll add that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was really good. And I'm so glad that it went in the direction of the indigo and the crystals, because I think most of my tribe falls into that category. And it's not even something that I really think to talk about. So I know they're really going to feel heard by you, which is really rare for, I think, most of these people. Not many people are serving them in such a deep way and such an educated way. So thank you so much for being here. It was really, really a pleasure.
Thank you, Rachel, and goodbye to everybody.
All right. Bye, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to intuitive art and you've never done it with me, go to intuitiveartacademy.com for your free class. You'll learn how to have a conversation with your higher self in 3 easy steps. That's intuitiveartacademy.com. And if you're already a pro or you've done the free class and you want to learn more about creating abundance from your purpose, go to workyourpurpose.com and you'll watch a free video series all about what it takes to create a purposeful income from doing what you love. All right, enjoy, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.